Hi, in this short video I talk about the relationship between the Apostle Paul and the city of Tarsus. Paul was a citizen of Tarsus, no mean city he calls it, and I kind of cover a few things in brief. I talk a little bit about the history of Tarsus, I talk about Paul's relationship to the city, and why it is that Barnabas went to Tarsus to go and get Paul, or Saul as he was known then, and bring him to Antioch to help with the new church that was growing there, because it was a combination of Jews and Greeks worshipping together and being called for the first time Christians. So it's only a couple of minutes long. I think it's got some interesting stuff that you'll enjoy. So here we go, Paul and the city of Tarsus. I'm here in ancient Tarsus, which was a very important city. It's got a fantastic heritage with a history that includes the Hittites, the Lydians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Seleucids, and eventually the Romans. When I think of Tarsus in the 1st century BC, I tend to think of pirates and professors. I think of pirates because Cilicia and the city of Tarsus was one of the main headquarters for a lot of the pirate groups that would terrorize the Mediterranean, and Pompey was tasked with destroying them, which he did very effectively. He found out about their systems of navigation, their techniques, and he pretty much put the pirates to rest. At the same time, Mithridates IV was one of the most formidable enemies that the Romans faced. And he killed a lot of Romans in Ephesus. He did a lot of things, and Pompey was also kind of chasing him. But while he was out here, Pompey engaged a number of campaigns in the east, establishing kingdoms, conquering some areas. And it's probably very likely as well that Pompey may have conquered parts of, did win contests and clients in Syria, in Judea, the Decapolis, and those places. And it could be that some of the ancestors of the Apostle Paul, Saul of Tarsus, were enslaved at that point and taken back to Tarsus as slaves. And it's likely that Paul grew up from a family who were originally slaves, Jewish slaves brought to Tarsus. At some point they won their freedom, perhaps under Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar came here for a time. He did some works. He was temporarily called Juliopolis, the town, also under Augustus. But at some point, Paul's family, their ancestors were set free from slavery. So Paul was born a free man. He was born a Roman citizen, as it were. And the other aspect of Tarsus is not only the pirates, it's also the professors, because Tarsus had some of the best philosophical teachers in the world. They were probably behind Athens and Alexandria. This is the place you would really go to get a good education. So it was something of a university town, and it probably had some impact on the Apostle Paul or Saul growing up, as he would probably absorbed or imbibe something of the intellectual atmosphere, whether that's Stoic philosophy or rhetoric or Platonic philosophy. It's very likely he gained some insight into that while he was here. So this connection of Paul's ancestors being taken as slaves from Judea, brought to Tarsus, I think also explains Paul's connection to both. Why he was a citizen of the Roman Empire, grew up in Tarsus, but still had a lot of connections in Judea, which is why he went there also to get part of his education. So yeah, Paul of Tarsus, a citizen of no mean city, and it is a very important city in the Roman Empire, a very important city over the period of the Persian, Greek, and Roman empires. I'm here in Tarsus at the Church of St. Paul, which is now a museum, not really a functioning church. But it's worth thinking about Paul's relationship to Tarsus. I mean, Paul was born in Tarsus. He was born as a Roman citizen, so he was part of the political infrastructure and networks of the Roman Empire. But it's also a Hellenistic city. It wasn't the 1st century. So it's a place where you had schools of Greek philosophy, Stoic, rhetoric, and It's very likely that Paul learned some of that, or at least absorbed it through osmosis. And Paul was also Jewish. He was committed to the Jewish Christian, raised in the Jewish family, a Hebrew of Hebrews from the tribe of Benjamin, went to Jerusalem to get a Jewish education, became a Pharisee. Paul was a citizen, or a person who very much at the cross section of Roman, Jewish, and Greek worlds. And he began persecuting Christians. Got converted famously on the road to Damascus. And after that, he had a kind of ministry that was, initially in Damascus. Then he was doing some stuff in Arabia. Went to Jerusalem. Eventually, though, he goes back to Tarsus, and that's where Barnabas finds him, because Barnabas is doing some ministry in Syrian Antioch, where you got Greeks and Jews worshipping together, becoming what the local authorities called Christianoi, Christians. And Barnabas thinks, well, I need someone who can help me out with this church, this sort of cosmopolitan, multi-ethnic church in Syrian Antioch. When there's a lot of anti-Jewish sentiment going on in light of the crisis around Caligula, there's various antagonisms with the Jewish community. Who can I find that is trained in the Jewish law, who knows Greek philosophy, who knows the Greek world, who's a Roman citizen, can navigate his way through the various cultural, legal, philosophical perils, knows all the religious traditions. And that's where Barnabas says, better call Saul. So he goes to Tarsus and brings Saul to Antioch to help out with the church there. So Tarsus, very significant, not only for Paul's birth, but it's the place where Barnabas had to come and get him to help out with the ministry in Syrian Antioch.